Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this implicit expectation of pure precision, right?
Right, yeah, like it's supposed to be black and white.
Exactly. It feels like engineering. You break your arm, the X-ray machine hums, it spits out an image with a jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it, and, well, there it is.
Yeah, it's incredibly binary, broken or not broken, it's clean. And frankly, I mean, that cleanliness is really comforting to us. We like our problems to be, highly visible,
Oh.
easily categorized.
Oh, absolutely. But then you step out of the orthopedics department and into the world of neurodevelopment or trauma or just human communication in general, and suddenly that X-ray machine is utterly useless.
Oh, completely useful.
Right. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is, well, it's murky, it's fluid.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. And the fascinating thing is that our default reaction to that murkiness, especially in clinical or educational settings, is usually to try and force the X-ray machine to work anyway.
We just push harder.
We push so much harder for those clean binary answers. We demand them, even when the human mind completely resists that kind of categorization.
Which brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today. We are exploring a remarkably powerful, heavily concentrated excerpt from a Substack piece by Dr. Jaime Hoerricks.
It's a fantastic piece.
It really is. The piece is titled WH Questions and the Cost of Compression, If GLPs Ran the Room. And we're going to use this text to just completely deconstruct the invisible architecture of how we ask questions and hopefully try to imagine a radically different way of interacting.
Yeah, a total paradigm shift.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, starting right with the title. Before we get into anything else, we have to clarify what a GLP actually is, because that fundamentally changes how we view this entire text.
Absolutely. So GLP stands for Gestalt Language Processor. And to understand why this is so important, we really have to look at how we typically view language development.
Right.
The standard model we're taught is analytical, right? We think of language like stacking bricks. You learn a single word, and you stick it to another word to make a phrase.
And eventually you build a sentence.
Exactly. Brick by brick.
A very linear, localized process.
Yeah, very localized. But a Gestalt language processor doesn't learn brick by brick. They learn language in gestalts, meaning these large holistic chunks. They process the entire field of an interaction all at once.
Wait, so they're not just parsing out the vocabulary?
No, not at all. They aren't just absorbing the individual words. They are absorbing the intonation, the emotional resonance, the physical environment, the rhythm of the moment. They are processing the entire atmosphere of the space.
Oh, wow. So they aren't just hearing a sentence. They are intimately feeling the climate in which that sentence was spoken.
Yes.
Which completely illuminates the subtitle of Dr. Hoerricks' piece, which is Designing Questions for a Field-First Mind. I mean, if a person processes the entire field first, you can't just toss a standard question at them and expect a simple, isolated answer.
You really can't. And that leads directly to the opening provocation of the text. Hoerricks they flip our standard communication model entirely upside down by asking this one question. They ask, what if questions were built for whether, not extraction?
Whether, not extraction.
Yeah.
I mean, that metaphor is just incredibly visceral. When you think about traditional WH questions, who, what, where, when, why, they really do function exactly like a mining operation.
Pure extraction.
Pure extraction. Think about the mechanics of it. You have a specific objective. You fire a why question at someone, like a drill bit.
Right.
You are literally trying to break apart their defensive topsoil, locate a highly specific ore of data, and forcefully pull it out of them to enrich your own understanding.
What's fascinating here is how that extraction model treats the person being questioned.
Yeah.
It treats them as a resource to be depleted.
Wow, yeah, that's exactly it.
Right. Hoerricks contrasts that aggressive mining approach with the concept of weather. Consider the mechanics of checking the weather.
Mm-hmm.
When you step outside, you don't look up at the sky and demand that it give you 72 degrees and partly cloudy.
No, you'd look crazy.
It'd look completely ridiculous. You simply experience the environment, you feel the temperature, you observe the wind direction. You are feeling the atmosphere of a space without demanding that it fundamentally change to suit your immediate needs.
I have to push back here for a second, though.
Go for it.
Because checking the weather sounds beautiful and it's very poetic, but sometimes we absolutely need extraction, right?
Sure.
I mean, if I'm in an emergency room, The doctor needs to extract the knowledge of whether I'm allergic to penicillin immediately,
Oh, definitely.
or a pilot needs exact coordinates. How does this weather approach survive in those high-stakes environments?
Well, that is the exact right question to ask because it highlights the scale of what Hoerricks is critiquing here. This isn't an argument that a surgeon in triage shouldn't ask a direct medical question.
Okay.
The profound issue Hoerricks is pointing out is that we have taken the extraction method, which is a tool meant for highly specific, often critical data gathering, and we have made it the default architecture for all human connection.
Oh, I see.
We use extraction as the baseline in our classrooms, our living rooms, our casual conversations. And when extraction becomes the default, the text notes that truth is treated as something forced on demand.
Ah, right. When you force truth on demand, it ceases to be a conversation at all. It becomes an interrogation.
Precisely.
The person asking the question hold all the power, shining a spotlight, and the person answering is just, they're backed into a corner.
Exactly. But Hoerricks suggests that in a field-first room, inquiry begins with relation and offers multiple doorways. Truth becomes something invited into being.
Invited into being.
Yeah. Think about the psychological shift there. An invitation requires consent. It means truth is no longer an ore you're stealing from someone. It is a collaboration.
It's a shared experience.
Right. It's an atmospheric condition that you and I are creating together in the space between us.
So you aren't forcing them down a single narrow mine shaft. You are providing multiple doorways to let them show you where they are at. It totally changes the posture of an interaction.
It completely reframes it.
Like instead of me standing over you with a clipboard demanding a status report, we are sitting side by side on a porch watching the storm roll in. We are experiencing the weather together.
It's a beautiful alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But Hoerricks knows that recognizing this alternative isn't just like an intellectual exercise, because the moment you realize how beautiful a weather-based room could be, you inevitably have to look back at all the extraction-based rooms you've survived.
Yes. Yes, and the text takes a very sharp, very emotional turn right here.
It really does.
Before the essay even fully launches into its main argument, there is a gentle note to the reader. Hoerricks pauses to acknowledge that the piece is pivoting from naming harm toward imagining alternatives, and then comes a line that is just devastating. The author writes, "For some readers, possibility is harder to touch than pain."
That is a staggering psychological insight.
But wait, why would possibility be harder to touch than pain? That feels completely backward on its face, right?
It does seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, like if you're hurting, shouldn't the possibility of relief, the possibility of a better room, be the easiest and most desirable thing to grasp?
You would think so, but we have to look at the mechanics of enduring difficult environments. When you exist in a state of chronic discomfort, when you are constantly being extracted from, your nervous system adapts.
It hardens.
Exactly. You build rigid defensive structures. Pain, especially familiar pain, is predictable. You know the rules of the extraction game, even if you absolutely hate them.
You know how to play the game.
Right. Possibility, on the other hand, requires dropping those defenses. It requires hoping for a softness that you might never actually receive, which leaves you incredibly vulnerable.
Oh man, that makes so much sense. It makes me think of like a physical injury. Imagine you severely break your arm, but you don't have access to a doctor, so it heals improperly.
Yeah.
And you end up having to wear this rigid, heavy cast that keeps your arm bent at a really awkward, painful angle for years. Over time, that dull ache just becomes your normal. You learn how to sleep with it, how to work with it.
It becomes a localized managed trauma.
Exactly, managed trauma. Then one day someone comes along and says, hey, we can take that cast off. We can do therapy and straighten your arm.
Yeah.
That's the possibility.
Right.
But the actual physical mechanism of removing that cast and stretching out those tendons and muscles that have been completely atrophied in that bent position for years, that stretching is agonizing.
It hurts.
In that moment, the sharp, blinding pain of possibility hurts significantly more than the dull, familiar ache of just leaving the cast on.
That is the perfect mechanism to describe what Hoerricks is talking about. Touching possibility means stretching atrophied emotional muscles. And the text doesn't shy away from where that pain comes from either.
No, it doesn't.
It explicitly talks about the necessity of grieving the rooms you never had. It lists these incredibly tangible everyday environments: classrooms, clinics, friendships, families, workplaces, conversations.
It's literally everywhere.
It is everywhere.
Yeah.
Think about a standard clinical intake form.
Oh, yeah.
It is pure extraction. Tick these boxes, list your symptoms. There is no relation, no whether.
Just data.
Or the classroom, where a teacher fires a WH question at a student in front of 20 peers, demanding a singular forced truth on the spot.
Terrifying.
Or even a family dinner table, where a well-meaning parent interrogates a child with, "Why did you do that today?" leaving no multiple doorways for the child to express their actual internal state. Realizing that a different kind of questioning could have changed everything in those formative moments, it forces you to mourn the versions of yourself that could have existed if you had just been given the right space to bloom.
And because that realization of lost opportunity brings up so much intense grief, you'd expect a writer to just push through the discomfort to make their point.
Right, just power through.
But Hoerricks does something radically counterintuitive here. And here's where it gets really interesting. Hoerricks actively interrupts their own essay to give the reader explicit permission to stop reading.
Yes, the text literally instructs the reader to pause if you need to, put the piece down, circle the block, get a drink.
I mean, it is so rare to consume any kind of media that actively encourages you to walk away from it. Every algorithm, every article is designed to hook you and extract your attention for as long as possible.
Exactly.
But if you look closely at the mechanics of what Hoerricks is doing, they are demonstrating the field-first approach in real time. By telling the reader to step away, they are refusing to extract your focus.
They're practicing what they preach.
Yes, they are honoring the internal weather of your emotional state. They just opened a doorway out of the room.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a complete dismantling of the traditional dynamic between a writer and an audience. Hoerricks includes a sentence here that honestly, I think it should be framed on the wall of every educational institution.
Which one?
Let the nervous system know that imagination is not an exam.
Wow. Imagination is not an exam.
Wow.
I want everyone listening right now to just hold on to that phrase.
So powerful.
Think about the last time you were sitting in a meeting and your boss suddenly turned to you and asked a sharp, unprompted why question. Why did those numbers drop?
Oh, the panic.
Your heart rate probably spiked, your stomach clenched, your breathing got shallow. Your nervous system wasn't treating that as an invitation to collaborate.
No, not at all.
It was treating it like a pop quiz where your survival was on the line. We are so deeply programmed to treat every interaction like an exam.
We really are. And when the nervous system feels threatened like that, when it enters that fight or flight exam state, what is the first cognitive function to shut down?
Imagination.
Imagination.
Yeah.
You cannot creatively problem solve, you cannot imagine alternatives, and you certainly cannot invite truth into being when your biological imperative is just to survive the interrogation.
You're just trying to get out alive.
Exactly. The text notes that these essays are meant to open windows, not demand that you climb through them all at once. True comprehension requires safe, self-paced exploration. Hoerricks is essentially regulating our nervous system through the text itself.
They are telling us it's safe to take the cast off slowly.
Yes.
And once we are settled, once the nervous system knows there is no exam today, the text transitions to its ultimate core invitation. Having established the harm of extraction and the beauty of the weather, Hoerricks asks us to reimagine the very foundation of the spaces we inhabit.
And again, notice the careful, deliberate framing here. Hoerricks writes, I want to begin this one a little differently. Not with a complaint, not with a correction, but with a small, impossible invitation.
I am obsessed with the phrase, a small, impossible invitation.
It's great.
It's such a clever paradox. It acknowledges that what is about to be asked feels practically impossible to achieve in our current society, but it invites us to try on a microscopic personal scale anyway. It's not complaining about the past, and it's not trying to surgically correct a minor flaw in the current system.
Yeah.
It is asking for a completely new paradigm.
The invitation is this. Imagine for a moment that the room itself has a different ancestry.
Ancestry.
Yes. And the word ancestry does a massive amount of philosophical heavy lifting here. When we talk about ancestry, we are talking about inherited DNA.
Right.
Hoerricks is suggesting that our environments, the classrooms, the offices, the clinics, they are not neutral spaces. They have an inherited genetic code. They carry the behavioral traits and the values of the people who originally designed them.
And the text explicitly names who those traditional architects are. Hoerricks asks us to imagine that the room was not built by clerks, wardens.
Right, clerks and wardens.
Let's really look at the mechanics of what those two professions actually do. When you think of a clerk, what is their primary function?
Processing.
Categorization and filing. A clerk wants forms filled out correctly, data processed efficiently, and anomalies eliminated.
They want order.
The clerk is the ultimate manifestation of the extraction mindset. To a clerk, a human being is just a disorganized spreadsheet waiting to be formatted. The clerk does not care about the weather.
No, they don't.
The clerk only cares if the data fits in the box.
And then you have the warden.
Yes, the warden.
If the clerk is the architect of categorization, the warden is the architect of containment. A warden builds a space defined by rigid boundaries, inescapable schedules, and absolute hierarchies of power.
It's all about control.
Right. In a room built by a warden, truth isn't just extracted, it is demanded under threat of penalty. The warden's room is designed to ensure compliance, not connection.
Which explains why we all feel that spike in our nervous system. Our classrooms with their rigid rows of desks, our corporate meetings with their strict agendas, they literally share DNA with a prison and a filing cabinet.
It's a harsh realization, but it's true.
So the impossible invitation is to imagine an entirely different ancestry. If our conversational spaces weren't built by clerks who want to file us, and they weren't built by wardens who want to control us, who would build them?
Well, based on the principles Hoerricks has laid out, the need to check the weather, the focus on relation, the multiple doorways, the new architects would have to be entirely different kinds of professionals. You could imagine a room built by a gardener.
Yes, a gardener. Because a gardener knows you cannot forcefully extract a tomato from a vine by yelling a WH question at it.
No, that wouldn't work very well.
You can't drill into the soil to pull the growth out. You can only manipulate the environment. The soil quality, the water, the sunlight. And then you step back and invite the growth into being.
Or, to use Hoerricks' own metaphor, the room could be built by a meteorologist.
Oh, I like that.
Think about how a meteorologist interacts with the world. They set up barometers, they watch wind patterns, they measure atmospheric pressure.
They observe.
Exactly. They don't build walls to contain the storm. They build instruments to observe it. A conversational room built by a meteorologist wouldn't have an agenda or an intake form. It would just have space to measure the emotional pressure of the people inside it.
This completely upends how we think about fixing communication. Hoerricks isn't just asking us to learn a new communication script.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It's not about just swapping out an aggressive question for a polite one while sitting in the exact same chair. Because if you ask a gentle, weather-based question in a room that still has the structural DNA of a warden, the person you were talking to will still feel the walls closing in.
They'll still be bracing themselves.
They will still feel the threat of the exam lingering in the air. The foundation itself has to change.
Precisely. You cannot plant a field-first mind in a clerk-first room and expect it to thrive.
So let's bring all of these threads together. What does this deep dive mean for you listening to us right now?
Yeah, how do we apply this?
It means that every single time you log into a Zoom call, or sit across the table from your partner, or walk into a doctor's office, you are stepping into a room with an ancestry. And you have agency in that space. You have the power to decide how you are going to operate within it. Are you going to embody the clerk, relentlessly extracting data just to file it away? Are you going to play the warden, forcing a specific answer to maintain your control over the interaction? Or are you going to drop the drill, open a doorway, and just take a moment to check the weather?
It's a profound shift in how we approach one another. And if we take Hoerricks' concept of the ancestry of the room to its logical extreme, it leaves us with an incredibly vital question to explore in our modern era.
What's that?
If our physical rooms were built by clerks and wardens, consider the digital rooms we spend the vast majority of our time in today. The internet, our social media platforms, our algorithms, they are the ultimate hyper-efficient clerks and wardens. They're designed purely for data extraction, categorizing our every click to keep our attention contained in a highly profitable cell.
That is deeply unsettling.
So what would a digital space built by a meteorologist actually look like? If an algorithm wasn't designed to extract your data or force your engagement, but was built simply to let you experience the weather of human connection, how fundamentally different would our world be?
That is something to truly sit with. Because maybe at the end of the day, we don't actually need the X-ray machine to give us a clean binary answer. We just need to let our nervous systems know the exam is over, step outside into the muddy waters, and finally feel the rain.